No, but because I even asked a lot of information now, so maybe Katie did it.
You have to go to the front. Let's go to the front.
Okay. Thanks for coming. I'm very honored to invite MetaObjects, Ashley and Andreas. They're basically based in Hong Kong, but they're also working internationally, especially in like London and a lot of European, like especially Australia as well. So their project is mainly about a lot of art and technology and media art, the different types of like VR and AR interactive game and like motion capture, all kind of devices. They're working with a lot of company, like big company like Samsung or Hyundai, with that kind of company, but also what they're doing really well is supporting artists. So the reason why they mainly came here, they're supporting the Chinese artists doing a lot of motion capture things. And then also they work with the Eugenia, as you guys know. So they're also working with a lot of artists supporting kind of new media sort of things. So welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, So-Young. Yeah, thank you for having us. As So-Young mentioned, we're MetaObjects. We're a digital studio that facilitates production with artists and institutions. My name is Ashley. I'm artistic director, and I'm also doing a PhD at the School of Creative Media in Hong Kong. And Andrew, he's a technical person, director, technologist. And he does all the production for MetaObjects. And we started about 2017 in Hong Kong. Previously, we were in London. We both worked for a long time in the tech and art industry. And yeah, today we will share some of the projects we've been working with, some of the technologies we've been exploring, and talking about how we collaborate with artists to open up the possibilities for art through technology. So essentially, MetaObjects, we facilitate digital production with artists and cultural institutions. So we work a lot with quite a few museums as well. We work across VR, AR, 3D printing, motion capture, audiovisual production, and software and web development. Essentially, depending on the project, we will take it as an opportunity to learn and to develop new skills in this area, and to work closely with the artists to explore different uses of the technology. So we seek to encourage the sharing of knowledge of new digital tools and processes. So it's a collaboration and also sharing knowledge, technical knowledge with artists, and then to build a deeper understanding of the possibilities of new technologies. So this is a brief kind of overview of the kind of things we've done as a company. So Andy does the technical production across consultancy, 3D printing, motion capture, I mentioned these. And then I work more on the curatorial side in terms of curation, commissions, licensing, art advisory, and digital content and strategy. So we will start off with one of our first projects was a project with an artist named Samson Young, who represented Hong Kong at the Venice Biennale in 2017. So he's normally a sound artist, so he's trained as a composer. He has a PhD in the field, and he thought with 3D printing he could explore sculpture for the first time in his practice. So all his work deals with themes. This exhibition deals with themes of like songs of disaster relief, and wanted to create a sculptural work with the bust of Pythagoras, a spaceship, and Ronald Reagan.
Of course, all merged with the Winged Victory as a base.
Yeah.
But if you look closely, the Winged Victory is actually melting into the table there,
So
where the wings are.
Yeah, we consulted on the printing process, like what are the different materials, how to print this piece in multiple parts. We recommended having it lying on the side because the wings would make it very heavy, and basically worked with the artist to model the piece so that it was actually 3D printable. And for this, we worked with a printer. Well, he got it printed by an external company, and then worked with another artist in California who developed a technique for creating this aged bronze look on the print. So from this project, the artist wanted to continue working with 3D printing and invested in a large format 3D printer here. he actually purchased a second one, and we essentially collaborate with the artist to run the prints for him in his studio. So we share the cost of his production space, but also open up so that we could use it for other projects, but open up to the other artists and students who want to explore these technologies. And yeah, these are, some of, did you want to talk a bit about the technology? Or?
So yeah, these printers are scaled up FDM machines. So they work exactly the same way as the small desktop machines you've got out there, just scaled up to be much bigger. So like that piece on the right there, it's about 1.5 meters tall. I think that's 15 kilograms of plastic went into printing that. So you could print up almost 2 meters with them. So you can easily have these sculptures that are 25 kilograms of filament, and you think how like long a little 1 kilo roll of filament lasts on the smaller printers, but you can do really interesting things with them. Like they're quite unique for sculptural work because, I mean, for a start, it lets an artist who's only really competent with digital tools rather than physical sculpting make these really intricate, interesting shapes, and you can also make within the restrictions on the type of printing and overhangs, you can make some very interesting looking pieces that would be very hard to actually make by hand.
So this was one of the first pieces we printed on those printers. This is at the Guggenheim. They're essentially trumpet mouthpieces, so they're like instruments, but imagining what these kind of fictional, enormous sized instruments would sound like. And it's part of a much broader installation with Soundworks and
and also just playing with the space, having them embedded there so you can only see little parts of them.
And he applied a kind of pastel texture or coloring on top of it. So he likes to have the kind of artist's hand still involved in the process. So this is another work that we printed, which is a drivable bumper car shoe. It's printed in multiple parts, and Andy developed, a way of kind of assembling the different pieces together. And it's also colored with pastel, so when you sit in it, you get a bit chalky.
The artist likes to be a bit subversive like that.
And then this is the latest installation, which is at K11 Art Mall in Hong Kong. It's a new art mall where they commission various artists to create public installations. So this is a mini golf course, and Samson likes to develop a technique of mixing the colors. So there's two, maybe you want to...
Yeah, so the printers we have a dual feed. So primarily it's designed for printing in different colors if you have a 2-color part that you want to make. But you can also tell the printer to just feed both of them at once. It's especially useful for doubling the amount of filament you can actually load in the machine when you're printing very big bits. But also the way the nozzle is so thick for doing these very big pieces as well. It's the lines of plastic it's putting down are 1.2 mil thick, whereas the normal desktop machines are 0.4 mil. And the way the two filaments are loaded in, they don't actually fully mix, so you get this really interesting gradient around it depending on which side the surface is. So the gradient sort of goes from one of the colours to the other colour as you go around the perimeter, which you can maybe see here. You've got this part here was printed in green and pink, so you have green on this side, bright green on this side, and then the other side is bright pink, and then you have a gradient of all the shades between them.
But you also developed a technique with the artist where you can tweak the gradient effect to create a marbling kind of texture. So we opened up to other artists to print works. So this is one by one of the PhD graduates from our department who had a work on display at the Asia Society. So this is another, so we also worked with Samson on another robotic sound artwork. So this is a LRAD, which is a long-range audio device. It's essentially a sonic weapon. It's normally used in military.
And riot control. So it's primarily designed for police to be able to direct dispersal orders at people or to play high-pitched noises to try and like irritate people to disperse. But then he is using it to play birdsong, so to direct a very sort of directional stream of birdsong at people.
So it's using a heat sensor that tracks people around the gallery. So when it sees someone enter the gallery, it will lock onto them and follow them around, and then blast the sound at them.
So maybe we can play the video. Yeah.
So this is at Gropius Bau in Berlin, and it was part of a group show that was to celebrate the 30th anniversary of the fall of the Berlin Wall.
So this was actually developed from a performance piece here. Did you see the uniform in front of it there? So previously he'd done this as a live performance where he or gallery staff would dress up as a Hong Kong police officer from the colonial times and actually manually point the speaker at people while it's either playing recorded birdsong or when the artist is there, he actually improvises birdsong. So he wanted to be able to extend that to actually be an installation without the need for someone to point it at people. So we worked with him to develop this autonomous system. And we also wanted to keep with the military theme, so that's why we're using a thermal camera and a CCTV turret for the actual movement.
Yeah, so the other artist we work a lot with is Lu Yang, who is actually the reason we're in Melbourne, because she was supposed to do a live motion capture performance at Federation Square as part of Asia Topa Festival. And unfortunately, she couldn't join us because of the coronavirus and the travel ban. She's based in Shanghai. So we were here doing a motion capture workshop at University of Melbourne, just showing students from fine arts and computer science about how artists are using this kind of technology in their work. So this work is, we presented it 3 times. The first time was in Hong Kong at the Hong Kong Visual Arts Center. And at the time, we didn't have a huge budget, so we developed it with using HTC Vive trackers, which are used for gaming. So if you have one strapped to your head, use the controllers in your hands, and then 2 on your feet. There was a software that we used, which was called
Ikinema Orion. And that would let you use these low-cost Vive trackers, and then based on the position of your limbs would actually be able to rebuild your skeleton and then give you that as a live stream that you could import into 3D engines like Unity or Unreal.
But we recently found out, we have upgraded the performance since. So each performance, the artist will use it as an opportunity to upgrade it, improve it, upgrade the technology, and add more characters and visual effects. So each performance is always different, and it's an iterative process.
So subsequently, the artist wanted a higher fidelity of motion capture. Because using Vive trackers, you've only got very limited points, so the software needs to estimate where the other parts of your body are. So as you can see here, we're using the classic optical motion capture with classic kind of golf ball suits that I'm sure everyone has probably seen videos of at one point or the other. So you get a lot better resolution on the body movements with those. And so we can play a clip now. No, play. Oh. So all the graphics there are being displayed in real time on the big screen behind that dancer. And the artist as well has a MIDI controller that she's triggering these explosions and meteors and lasers with.
So essentially, a lot of her work is inspired by, Japanese manga but also Chinese medicine and Buddhism. So all her characters are inspired by various Buddhist deities that all are presented as superheroes with different kinds of superpowers. And she also likes to explore manipulation of the body by the brain. So these are the kind of deep brain stimulation crown that they're wearing, and she often features herself in her own work, often as like an androgynous character, because she sees the virtual medium as a space where you can manipulate and
yeah, so those boy band characters in the performance, I think, if I get that up, so they are all using the artist's own face there.
So yeah, that one was at Shanghai. We also presented in Hangzhou at the Powerlong Art Center. And we worked with the China Academy of Art in Hangzhou, who had an OptiTrack equipment, and we worked with them in the lab, and they loaned us their space and studio to upgrade the performance. So from these motion capture projects, we also have a lab, motion capture lab at my university, at CityU. They use a Raptor system, and we collaborate with PhD Eugenia Kim, which some of you may know, and she's working a lot with kind of dance and mental health and VR. This is just showing how we're interested in kind of education and bringing back what we did with artists into the university context, and opening up possibilities for artists to work with this kind of advanced technology. So let's see. So moving on from, I guess, motion capture, Lu Yang also likes a lot of games. She plays a lot of games. She's a bit of a otaku. And she is also, for this installation, we hacked a Dance Dance Revolution arcade machine. I don't know if you remember the old, in the old arcades in the 90s or early 2000s, and inserted it with her own music and characters that you could actually play in the gallery.
Yeah, so the artist herself purchased this second-hand arcade cabinet, and then asked us if we could hack it to run her own software with her own characters.
So this is...
She also collaborated with the Japanese pop group Satellite Young, who provided the music, and also has a cameo appearance as one of the characters. And the cabinet was fully playable in the gallery, so anyone could hop on and play the game.
Yeah, so that was at the Shanghai Biennale at the Power Station of Art in Shanghai. And so this is her latest game project, which is on display at ACA at the moment in the Feedback Loops exhibition. And it's a full 10-level game where you're playing one of her characters, which is the Material World Knight. And you go through her levels, essentially her world. At one point you're in heaven, another point you're in the afterlife, which is the Buddhist hell. And then at one point you're flying through space and you're shooting material objects. And that at the end you are essentially battling yourself. So it's kind of, there are a lot of narratives tied into all the symbolisms in the world that she creates. All of these characters are drawn from her past works.
Yeah, so this is almost like a retrospective of all her past works that she's incorporated into this world that you can explore and learn about.
And she made one of the hell levels into a VR kind of fly-through experience. Initially, it was intended to be a VR project, but after doing some tests with her, we realized that maybe a game would be more suitable, since she really wanted to have this interactive, exploratory experience.
Yeah, so right now with VR, it's very hard to make sort of very big environments, because especially for the average gallery visitor who doesn't have VR at home, they're not going to be used to the different ways of moving around in VR. And it's also very hard to sort of move someone forcefully through VR, because any kind of camera movement is very, very susceptible to motion sickness. So to really get these expansive environments that people can explore, she wanted to, we settled on presenting it as a third-person computer game. And so we can play video.
And the narrative is kind of, you can, through the dialogue boxes, will reveal kind of the meaning and kind of philosophy behind the work, which is also a comment on kind of contemporary capitalism and, some personal conflict with tradition and within Chinese culture. So yeah, so these are some other projects we've worked on. This is a live audiovisual performance with some artists from based in London, and this was at Sonar in Hong Kong. So do you want to talk about the visuals?
Yeah, so this is a live audiovisual performance where Klon and New Romantic, the two performers there, are moving through this virtual environment while also live scoring. It's, again, the controls are very game-like, but rather than the audience playing the game, the performers are actually playing the game and moving through this kind of dystopic sci-fi environment full of these clones, these androgynous clones, and the artist Klon is also controlling these clones and making them perform actions to the music.
So these are kind of our kind of prototypes, projects in VR. So we worked with University of Salford Art Collection in Manchester, and they were interested to create a virtual gallery of their exhibition, which was called What's in Store. And it was more kind of a way for the gallery to explore ways in which people could view the exhibition, say they weren't able to see the exhibition when it was up, and maybe it was for people with health issues who may be in hospital, to give them a kind of artistic experience and to allow them to experience the exhibition even when the show is no longer up. So we developed this, we created a virtual environment and recreated their exhibition with name tags and playable videos. And we also created a prototype for Sedition, which is an online platform in London that I used to work for. And they essentially sell limited edition videos and images that you view on TVs, tablets, and smartphones. So this was more a prototype to explore how they could display works in a virtual environment. So you can select the different environments from, outdoor, cathedral, or gallery, and then you select your artworks, and it would display on a large screen in a virtual space. And that was also presented at Sonar. It's more thinking about how galleries and artists are within an art context, like how VR could be used in this space. And this is just to show examples of other kinds of projects we've worked on. So this is a biolab, which was presented at Art Basel, Hong Kong. It was with an artist named Wong Kit Yi, or Ali, who is based in New York, but also Hong Kong. And for this, we helped her link up with a scientist at City U, who was very enthusiastic about art and actually loaned his equipment so that we could do DNA sequencing at Art Basel. And it was tied into a much broader conceptual project where she was looking for the elixir of life. And basically, we analyzed the mitochondrial DNA, which was the mother's side. And her grandmother is on her mom's side is actually British, and she was looking at also ways of embedding like legal contracts into DNA. So like the contract when she sells her artwork will be leased for 99 years, which is the amount of years that Britain leased Hong Kong to China. So it's much part of a much broader kind of conceptual project, and there's a video that kind of explores the concept behind the work and what she's trying to do with the DNA sequencing. And it's the first time we worked with this kind of technology, but we act as a kind of mediator to link up with institutions or people that we know and to try to translate between different sectors, between art, science, and technology. And that's me. Just posing. And we also started to do more like commercial commissions. We were approached by some property developers to commission artists to make kind of large LED artworks, like video artworks. And these are, kind of projects that help fund an artist's practice. So it gives them a means to kind of develop their work and get paid for it, and it could also sustain them for a period of time so that they could develop their more experimental practice after they complete a few commissions. We're kind of interested to explore these collaborations within the commercial realm, mainly as a means to kind of further support artists and to engage them with other kinds of ways for showing their work. And currently, this is our current contract that we're working with is M+ Museum. So they're a museum that's to open next year in Hong Kong. It's been in the planning for more than 10 years. And they're essentially building an LED facade on the front of this building that faces the waterfront. So we've been contracted as the creative technologists to sit between kind of the artists and the curatorial team and the facilities management to understand, to commission artists, to be involved in the process of commissioning artists to create works for this facade. So part of it is also looking at the collection and seeing how to kind of best display works on this kind of challenging screen. You want to talk about
Yeah, so it's an interesting project because, as you might be able to just make out here, this is the building. The building here is fully open with windows on this side, and you can make out some horizontal lines there. So they are actually architectural sunshades that are built in to the window to protect it from direct sun, to lower, for example, the carbon footprint of running the air conditions. But they're also using them to mount strips of RGB LEDs. So you end up with this interesting screen that has a resolution of 2,000 pixels wide, but only 120 pixels high. So you really have to be kind of careful about what you try and display on there for it to not be too detailed. They've also done an interesting thing where they have some diffusers built into some of the LEDs and reflectors built into other ones. So you actually have two layers of the screen. One layer is directional and is pointing across the harbour. This is on Kowloon's side, and then across the harbour you have Hong Kong Island. So one set of LEDs are designed to be visible from across the harbour. Another set are designed to be visible around the West Kowloon Cultural District Park, which is where this building is situated. And so from a technical point of view, you could actually have completely different content for the people in the park versus the people who are watching from across on Hong Kong Island. In practice, it would be hard to have totally different content, just because any dark areas in the high power cross harbour LEDs, the stuff from the low power diffuse LEDs would bleed through. But you can certainly, there's a lot of interesting opportunities to like highlight parts of the image. Like say if you had a picture of a sunset, you could make the sun appear much brighter for the people viewing it across the harbour. So there's a lot of challenges, but it's certainly very interesting technology to look at for artists.
Yeah, so this is kind of an overview of the different kinds of projects we've been involved in, and I guess the ways we work with artists and also institutions. And we aim to kind of develop long-term relationships with artists and institutions, and to also bring it back to education and to show like emerging artists what is possible with new technology, and to co-learn as an iterative process. So through these projects we learn also new skills, new technologies, and that can be applied in different projects. And we help bridge links between, universities, but also the technology sector and education sectors, to build a network to help kind of support these kind of projects, which can be kind of hard to fund. Artists don't have access to like high-end technologies a lot of the times. And we try to make them understand different kinds of technologies that are available and help bridge those links so that they can get opportunities to create their works. And we aim to be sustainable, but we also understand artists do not have commercial budgets to make their work. So we help make it happen, and through our networks, our partnerships with institutions, this is what we hope to do more of, and to also support the artistic community in different ways. Yeah, and we're happy to answer any questions you have about, anything, specific projects, or the technology we're working with.
Question?
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, because it's like working with an industry institution is pretty obvious, but working with an artist, is there any challenging in terms of the budget or sustainability or business models, or how to support it? It's just about technical support, and then because of and this is going to be artistic exhibition and show, and then they're not really actually make any income, and how you guys actually use all that kind of process. Yeah.
I mean, the artists we've been working with so far, like Lu Yang and Samson, have their own profile and commissions. So we support them on their projects, and they have kind of existing sources of funding. We help artists. We hope to do more of like commissioning artists by working with like cultural institutions to commission artists to make new works, and then we would help kind of develop the technical side of those projects. Usually when an artist comes to us for a project, there will be an existing budget, and we will say like the different pricing for different kinds of technology, and then they can work out what is feasible within that budget. And it kind of plays into the production of what the end result will be. Yeah.
Any question about Lu Young's work, the VR piece where you're descending into hell in VR?
Yeah.
Can you just describe a little bit about the gamification aspect? I didn't quite understand.
So the work in general, maybe I can just play that silently in the background while we talk
you're
about
saying
it.
That you sort of solved the problem of moving around in a big space
Yeah.
by having a third person. So do you have any control over that person?
So they're actually the what was going to be a VR experience evolved into two separate pieces. So the main piece is this game, which is played just on a TV using a PlayStation controller. So this video here is just representative of what a gallery visitor would be seeing and playing with a controller. So someone would be, you can actually see this at ACA. So someone is playing that as a normal PlayStation game would be played. And then the VR is purely a viewed experience. And that is, there was a small clip of the hell level there, but that is just a very slow fly through just a single level as a VR experience, just because the artist had already, both had already agreed to have a VR piece at the gallery show, but also just wanted to try a VR piece to get a better feel for the technology.
So it's kind of another dimension to the game.
Yeah, so it's kind of a parallel to the game. So the VR piece is just a small narrative fly-through of a small piece of the overall game.
No, but she realized that the game would be much better for what she wanted to do, because in VR there's a lot of motion sickness and it's not easy to navigate in that way. So she just made it as a very slow fly-through, so you didn't get...
Yeah.
It was more an experience where you're just...
so
drawn through the space and you see different...
Yeah, so in the VR piece, you're very much just a spectator in a fly-through, whereas she wanted the player to really be able to be her character, which is why we changed the main experience to be a video game rather than a virtual reality experience.
So in a production like this, it's just you two doing all this work? Is that...
So in this case, actually, the artist had already worked with 3D animation. So she was very technically proficient with creating 3D scenes.
Yeah.
So she actually put all of these levels together herself, and then I did the programming to make everything interactive and make the player be able to move around. So yeah, for a lot of artists, they actually do a lot of their own technical work as well. Samson Young as well does his own 3D modelling. And generally, we just work to sort of help him clean up the models to make them 3D printable.
Kind of opening that box a little bit, if you guys sharing that much. So that goes through you, right? You are the technical director of yourself, in a way. Because I'm seeing that you go from material fabrication, physical fabrication to interactive games. There's a skill set that's quite vast. It's a wide spectrum of technique and knowledge in different frameworks in which you act.
Yeah.
How are you piling up that knowledge, and how that IP, if you're tackling it, has become your property that you are amassing perhaps in 3 to 5 years, becoming something else? Are you thinking?
So we don't really own the IP. So we just
the technical, not creative IP, technical IP. So your pipeline, basically.
Do you just mean our workflow?
Or knowledge, technical knowledge.
Yeah. This is peer-to-peer question, right?
We are interested in knowledge sharing and sharing of knowledge. In terms of just the company, right now it mainly is us two as the 2 full-time employees. We do bring in other freelancers, especially in sort of our community, who have complementary skills that we don't have, who we will train and be able to actually hire them to be able to add to the work we're doing. We're also interested in knowledge sharing, which is why we do all these workshops and talks. But we've not actually thought about kind of archiving our processes. Although in many ways, a lot of what we're doing is like in these days kind of a standard. So for example, all of our 3D work like here is in Unity. And so that's designed to be a game engine, but a lot of artists are using it because it makes this high-end 3D graphics and virtual reality very accessible. And so we are using these standard tools and just making them accessible for artists to be able to utilize them.
But these different ways of using the technology, they're more like examples of what you could do, and to try to open it up for other people to think of other ways they could use it for an artwork. I think we don't really think of it as kind of holding it as our own property, but more about creating more possibilities for other people to use that and to explore different things with it.
So I just missed Samson Young's show in Edinburgh, but I managed to see the install just before, just after they were taking it down, and I mean it was phenomenal to have that sense of a gigantic chunk being submerged in the floor. It was physically really exciting. The bit I didn't see was hear was the sound, but I know he was working with the sound synthesis department to kind of actually make the sounds that a 20-metre long trumpet would make. I was wondering if you had anything to do with that, kind of how that collaboration
that's very much Samson's domain. So that he comes from a sound background. He's a sound artist, so that is a skill set that he doesn't sort of need our assistance with.
So he composes the piece. I think it's a surround sound work. We saw it in Hong Kong. And it's an installation with speakers in a circle, and you're standing in the middle, and he has various calls. They're like kind of trumpet calls, but they're compositions. So each call represents something like a morning call or like a war call or something. They're all different, and they're kind of interpretations of what this instrument would sound like. And he often collaborates with another musician, Michael, that features in a lot of his work, a vocalist. And so he composes all of those himself.
I was wondering, with the large format FDM printing, how that kind of compares to standard 3D printing, and like, did the potential issues with it scale up with the actual format, or?
The kind of print failures you get are very similar to normal FDM. We did actually end up somewhat hacking the machines because of the way we are using the filament, which is to always feed two filament at the same time. I added, using an Arduino, some additional sensors. Because the printer actually has filament out sensors, but they're purely a mechanical switch. So if, for example, one of the feeds gets jammed or breaks, then the printer doesn't know that that's happened. So I added some Arduinos and rotational sensors so that we could trigger the printer's own built-in system for handling changing filaments, which cut down the print failures a lot. But you can still get exactly the same way prints coming away from the bed and turning into a spaghetti mess.
25 kilos of...
Yeah. There's a big pile of partial prints that the artist is going to at some point break down and make into a collage. But yes, it can be quite costly in terms of material. But yeah, so far the artist always tries to recycle both the failed prints, and also he likes to make sculptures out of all the support material, because of course it uses exactly the same kind of support pillars as the normal desktop printers do, but scaled up.
But he likes those errors and those kind of unusual textures that the machine produces. And
In the audio-visual piece, what was going on now? Maybe I can probe later, but was it also using Unity? Were they controlling?
So the motion capture performance.
I know the audio-visual
piece that was just a slide.
Yes,
New
sorry,
Romantic.
New Romantic and Clone. So yes, that was created in Unity. Like Liu Yang, actually, the artist created these scenes, and we helped with the technical aspect of joining the scenes together, and also giving them a method to move around the space and control the clone characters. And all the audio was live scored by her collaborator, New Romantic.
That was then reacting to in Unity, or there was
they were separate, but so the artists were reacting to each other. So there was no technical reaction. It was all the artists reacting and sort of moving to the music and